Today, let's make a whole wheat sub roll. And I'm going to start with 225 grams or 8 ounces of whole wheat flour. That's right, we're making a whole wheat flour bun. To that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of vital wheat gluten. I have found that using vital wheat gluten in this recipe actually makes for a little better chew and a larger rise on the bread. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon of yeast. This happens to be Fleischmann's Active Dry Yeast. You can get it packets in the store. You can use a whole packet if you want to. I'm just using a teaspoon. Then we want to mix that up, just to make sure everything's equally dispersed. I like using this plastic container to make bread in. It's really simple. There's a lid too, so that way I can control the humidity and every aspect of it. No need to put a cloth over it or anything like that. We'll have links to these in the description. These are just a fantastic little container. Okay, now that that's mixed, I'm going to add water. I have here 7/8 of a cup, and that is important. It's also 210 grams of water. I may need more. I'm going to add it now and find out. Give that a good mix. We're looking for a fairly loose dough, but we don't want it to be like watery. Okay, that is looking a lot more dry than I really want it to be. Let me get more water. Okay, so I'm going to put in, let's say, another 1/4 cup of water just to see where we're at. This is a no-knead method of bread making, by the way, too, which I'll show you that in a little bit as soon as we get this going. See, the dry stuff will hide from you. You got to be careful. There's an important lesson there, too, with the water. You don't want to just add a bunch of water all at once. This time it took 1 1/8 cups of water, but it doesn't always take that much. It might take a little bit less. It might take a little bit more. So you want to be careful. See how that's about like the consistency of maybe a loose peanut butter? That's pretty much what we're looking for. And then I just like to scrape this off the side. You know, this is your dough. You paid for it. You want to get it all, right? And once it's in there, we're going to put a lid on it and see you in 10 minutes. All right, so 10 minutes has passed. It's time for what I call a stretch and fold. This is what I do instead of kneading. Now, as you see, it's just a lump of dough in there. I have here some water. I'm just going to get my hand nice and moist and then reach in there, get under that dough, pick it up, give it a little stretch. It's kind of raggy and gonna just fall apart and stick to your fingers at first. It's okay. I try to get it all back together again as best I can. Dip my hand in there one more time, then turn 90 degrees and lift up again and do it again as best you can. It doesn't work really, really well the first time around, but it gets easier, trust me. Then 90 degrees again, give it the stretch. See, it fell apart. You don't really want that to happen. And then another 90 degrees, give it another stretch. And then I just usually scoop around and try to get it all back into one big mass again if possible. Like I say, the first stretch and fold is always a mess. It's not coming together yet. The gluten isn't formed quite yet. It's okay. It'll form. It'll happen. And then put the lid back on. See you in 10 minutes. All right, 10 more minutes has passed. It's time for stretch and fold number 2. Again, get my hand nice and wet. Get in there, pick it up, and this time, see how it's coming together a little bit better? Stretches a little bit, slap it over on itself. Turn it 90 degrees, get more water, pick up that side, get the whole thing up there, slap it over on itself. 90 degrees, wash, rinse, and repeat, basically. Another 90 degrees, and do my 4th flip. You can already see those gluten strands are starting to work together. So I just like to make it round again, and then there we go. Another 10 minutes. 10 more minutes. You know what that means. Another stretch and fold. At this point, it's got quite a bit of structure to it, and it's actually starting to rise. I can feel it. It's lightening up slightly, and I can usually just let it stretch really far. There we go. That's some good stretch. And then the 4th side. Oh, yeah. Okay. And at this point, I usually determine if I need another stretch and fold. And you know what? Just to make it a little bit lighter, a little bit stretchier, I'm going to go for number 4. See you in 10 minutes. 10 more minutes have passed, and it's time for our 4th and final stretch and fold. So get my hand wet and reach in there, grab it, and you can see how stretchy this is now. It's amazing. And then flop it over on itself. Try to get all the pieces off the sides. And I'm going to grab 90 degrees over here. Stretch and flip it over. Need a little bit more water. The water just keeps it from sticking to you, because this is a rather sticky dough. That's why we don't just do a full-on knead. You can knead it if you really want to. I just find this is actually easier. It may take a little more time, but the end product is so great that I don't really worry about it. And usually I'm just doing something else while while it sits, so it's not a big deal. And I'm just going to flip that over and form it up. And now we're going to let this rest for 1 hour to rise. Okay, our hour is up and our bread has risen. As you can see, it is easily twice the size that it used to be. So what I want to do, I just want to get a little flour on the board. I have my dough scraper handy. You're going to need that. And then I'm just going to flip it over and let gravity do its thing. Just falls out just like that. And now make sure it's got flour everywhere that touches it, or it's going to stick to that board. Okay, this should make 2 pretty good size rolls. So I'm just going to try to cut it as close to the middle as possible here. There we go. Put one to the side there. Now we're going to shape it. What I like to do is this. I take all the corners and put them to the center and just keep doing that until I make a ball. Once that ball's made, then I just kind of pat it out. It's a little bit sticky, a little tacky, but not too bad. And I want to just stretch that out as much as I can. When it starts to spring back on you, put it to the side. Let it think about what it's done for a minute. And I'll work on the other one. Just bring that to the center, rotate, and bring it to the center, just like that. You just keep going around until you have a nice, even circle. More or less. You get a ball out of it, like that. Get both sides covered in the flour and pat it out. It's okay if you knock out the bubbles because the yeast is still working in there and there's still plenty for it to work on, so it's still going to make more gas. Okay, set that one aside, and now I'll start stretching this one. Treat it kind of like a pizza dough where you want to keep stretching it out, and you can even do the pizza thing if you want, like spin it around. I'm not going to do it. But what I am going to do is just keep working it and make it a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. Just want to stretch it out so I can shape these hoagie rolls. Okay, now let's go on to this one. Same thing. This is how I do pizza. Just kind of passing it between my hands. And it gets a little bit bigger each time. Just grab the rim and pull it around just like that. If it gets too wet for you and you need more flour, go for it. It's okay to put a little bit more bench flour out. Okay. This one's starting to get to the size I want it to be. And I'm starting to elongate it. See that? And what I'll do now is I'll just start rolling it up. And I just go nice and tight, roll it up, try to keep it even as much as possible, all the way across, put it on the seam, and then I'll take my fingers and just poke that end seam in. Okay? Roll it around a little bit, get some of that moisture off. And here we go. Stretch this guy out a little bit and begin rolling it up. The idea is you want to kind of have a skin on the outside. That helps them to rise a little bit better. Something like that. You want them pretty even down their entire length. That way they bake evenly and you don't get one side of the roll huge and the other side really, really tiny. So here we go. Stretch that out a bit. Stretch that out. Now comes the tricky part. I just have here a cookie sheet lined with a silicone mat. And what I'm going to do is get underneath them and get them onto the tray. You move quickly so that they don't stick to anything and they don't fall apart. And I'm just going to reshape slightly. And I will even take the dough scraper and get under the sides. What I'm doing is creating a little bit of tension. Here, let me show you this a little bit better here. When I get under it just a little bit like that and I'm pushing, what I'm actually doing is squeezing that dough just a little bit, creating some tension. It's that tension that forms a crust on the outside and keeps the gases in, letting it rise a little bit bigger. It's not crucial to do this, but it does help tremendously with a roll like this, where you want it to rise as much as possible. Whole wheat dough is not known for rising super big, thus the vital wheat gluten, and we do it as carefully as possible. Okay, these are going to sit for about half an hour to 40 minutes, but first I'm going to cover them with a thin towel just to keep drafts off. Set them to the side. Also, about this point, you want to set your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 230 degrees Celsius. Okay, so about 40 minutes has gone by, and as you can see, our bread has risen. Now, you do want to put that cut down the middle, and I can never get a knife to do that very well, so I have a special set of scissors, this is the only thing I use them for, but it's pretty simple. I just make a cut across the top and connect the cuts together, going about a ½ inch deep. Once I've done that, I pop them in the oven for 23 minutes. I took mine out at 23 minutes, and as you can see, they have a nice golden brown color, but what we want to do is find out if they're really done. And to do that, you grab one, and you just stick your probe thermometer in one end. See, it's got a nice crust on it. What you're looking for is under 212, but over 200. Look at that, 210.7, perfect. And now we're going to let these cool for, I don't know, like an hour before I touch them and cut them open, because they're not actually done. There's still a lot of steam going on in there.